Hello, this is Mark Tucker, and today we're going to look at creating a custom platform plugin for Jovo 4. Now, what does it mean by a custom platform? Uh, let's just go over here to our Jovo debugger sample application, and we've got the code running for just their hello sample. And if I go ahead and launch this, notice on the right-hand side, I get a list of lifecycle events. And here I get a listing of the different conversation. Now, a platform in the context of Jovo is, think of about a client. So if you have Alexa as your client, then the platform would be the Alexa platform. If you're writing a custom assistant that's from a web page, then there is a web platform that you can use that talk back and forth. And what Jovo is good at is that these different request JSON formats that come in based on the different client that you're in, comes in, and this is platform specific. In this case, the platform is the Jovo debugger. It's itself a platform, and there's a specific look at what this request format looks like. But then going through these different steps in this pipeline, or what Jovo calls middleware, then it takes that request and it turns it into input. In this case, it's saying, I've just issued a launch event, a launch type, and it keeps different information about the session and the user. At some point, it figures out from that input that we got from the platform-specific request what route to go to. And so this is the handler inside your code. It's going to go to the global components launch handler, execute whatever code's there, and return responses back and build up output. Now, this, just like this input is platform independent, and this output is also platform independent, and you can build up multiple outputs. And then at the very end, this response is once again platform specific. So this is going to be specific to the Jovo platform response. And this is the information that was put together based on directing to a specific handler and the code that's in the Jovo application itself. So just kind of to summarize, a platform is really a combination of a definition of a request, a response, information about what's recorded for a user and a device. All that gets put together into a platform. And out of the box, there's a number of different platforms. If you were to go to Jovo docs here, let's go to the marketplace. You could see the different platforms. You can use Alexa as a platform, or here's that web platform that we talked about. Now, there's also this CorePlatform, and that's what we're going to actually be using. CorePlatform provides a lot of the functionality of writing your own platform. And that's basically the web platform itself is just a thin layer over top of this core platform. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to create a platform plugin called Zap. Zap is some fictitious device. It's going to be a smart space heater, and you can turn the space heater on or off, set the temperature, set it to oscillate, whatever you want with your voice. And we want to create a custom platform for that specific product, let's say. So that's what we're going to be working on today. If you go to my repo here, and I'll have a link in the video to this Jovo 4 platform Zap sample project, then this has all the code that you need to get started. This README is the standard README that came with the Hello sample project. Shows you how to just get started and running if you don't know how to do that, or you're new to Jovo. But this other stuff here is going to be specific to our Zap custom platform plugin. So here's the documentation for that. So this just kind of summarizes what we talked about there with a little quick example in the debugger about what a Jovo platform is. And in fact, we mentioned before, the web platform is just a specialized instance of the core platform. So if we were to open up this example here, what you can see into a single file, this defines the web platform. And you'll notice all these references to core platform, core platform config. So let's look just quickly at what these different sections do. So this section right here is just about defining that the web platform is going to use the core platform, but make it specialized using this generic for web. The same thing with the platform. The web platform is going to use the core platform but make it define its own type called web. Notice every place where there's just the word web in here. We search here, then we see we got web platform, web platform, web. And then here we have an extension to the Jovo object, this $web, that would allow us to go ahead and check to see if this platform is installed, because then we can do some platform specific code. Here we're specifying what is the output going to look like. Remember, we talked about all these different outputs here, output. Then that's what defines that. And then the real thing that creates this new type called web platform is this core platform.create custom platform. I'm defining a platform called web platform, and it's going to have the kind of the shortcut name as web. And so that exposes this web platform. And so then when it comes time to install this plugin as part of Jovo, then you just new up a version of this web platform and you use the platform, right? So that's what we're going to do today, but we're going to create one for Zap, and it's going to be mostly just one file, but we'll talk about some of the different things that go along with that. So that's talking about the web platform. So creating the Zap platform, we're going to do the same thing. And notice we have those same groupings. We're going to define a Zap platform in the context of it's a core platform. It's using the core platform config, but we're specializing it for Zap. And there should be a way to do some extensibility here, that you could add some additional configuration to the platform, so that when you're newing up the plugin, you could add some custom stuff if you needed to do that for your platform. And so that's the first thing, is just letting the core platform and the config know that we're creating a new one for Zap. Here we're extending the Jovo object with $Zap, and we could use that then to check to see, in our handler codes, like, hey, is Zap installed? Is this request coming in of type Zap? You can do that, and you can also get access to the original request of this Zap object using the $sign request off of Zap. We're going to go ahead and use normalized core output like the web example did, but we're actually going to extend it a little bit. And what we're going to do is, instead of having it be normalized web core output template, we're going to create our own Zap output template. And the Zap output template is just going to extend that normalized one, and we're going to add a actions array of Zap actions, and a Zap action is going to be a specific enum type. So here are the different things that we want to add specifically to this response coming back. So the code that's the Jovo app might send commands back to the device to say, via voice, you say turn on the heater, and it's going to run through our Jovo app, and in the end we're going to send out a Zap action of type action on, and then the device itself could say, oh, via voice I told you to turn it on, and so then you actually do the hardware command to turn it on, right? So that's kind of the idea that we've got here. We also have this data object for each action. So you can pass some additional data along with it. And This unknown object just means it doesn't matter what it is. So you could make a single value here, or you can pass in an object that has additional key value pairs that describe in more detail specifics about that action. You could strongly type each of these actions if you wanted to do that as well. So that's basically all we're doing, is we're taking what was normally going to be part of this core output template and have just added an additional actions property. So that's what the code is that we're going to do here. And then this is actually the code that news it up. And then when we go to use this in our app TS file, we say we want a new Zap platform. And so that's how we register this new platform. So we could jump into and actually look at the code here, and this is the actual code that that we're talking about here in the example. But this is once again a single file. We're defining the Zap platform, and this is the whole definition of the extensibility. So let's look at that a little bit more in the docs here, and this is all in the source code. So if you were to come into here, you could see underneath this plugin Zap platform, here's that single file that has all this stuff defined that we talked about. And then we could go over to the app.ts file, and you could see that we're defining the Zap platform here, and we're plugging that in. And so that is a platform that we understand. And it can be multiple. You can have your Jovo application handle multiple platforms, and you can have a lot of the code same, and then you can check that $Zap or $web or other platform to do some platform specific stuff. But you could, your handlers could handle multiple platforms. And this over here in this at dev.ts, that's where we're defining the Jovo debugger, which once again is just based off of that core platform as well. It's just making it special to do requests for the Jovo debugger. So let's go back to our code here, and let's talk about the Zap request. Now, what is the minimum JSON, and what is the structure of that JSON for a platform that you create that's based off of CorePlatform? So the requirement is that it needs to have a request object that has a version, a timestamp, a platform, and the platform has to be whatever the platform is, like in this case, Zap. So this is how it knows to say, oh, this request, this JSON that came in out of nowhere that we don't know what it is yet. We need to figure out what it is, and what we do is we check this platform, and then we're like, oh, it's the Zap platform format, and then you have to specify some sort of a type. Now the input types here are you can find in this documentation on input types, and they're off the side here. It could be launch, it could be intent, text, speech, transcribed speech, error, or end. So consult the documentation there as far as what those are. And you should be able to, if you're creating your own platform, you could probably define your own types if there were for some reason a type. You would just have to make sure that you handled it to turn that into the proper input. So that's that point. But what would typically happen with a request is that you're going to specify an ID for the specific request here. And that's usually just a UUID that just gets generated. Every request gets its own ID that would be for tracking it later and logging. But also a lot of times the client is responsible for defining a device. So like if this was a mobile app that you were using, or the actual hardware device, if the space heater had this like a microphone and a speaker, and each of those units heaters was a device, you could send a specific device ID. So the client code that's running on the device, whether that be a web page, a mobile app, or a hardware device itself, would pass a device ID every session. back and forth, have a conversation. You start a session, back and forth until you end it. There's a session ID for that session and the user ID for the user that's logged into the web page or on the mobile app or however you're doing that. If you're keeping track of users, you can also specify IDs, and usually all that happens in the client. So in this case, we've got the same type of information that we're passing. We're passing the locale. In this context object, we're passing information about the device, the session, the user, but we can extend this with whatever we want. Here, I just added a my custom type with data. And so you have control over this, this format. There's a lot of other things defined on this request object. And if you go to core request here in the documentation for the Jovo framework, you can see that a lot of these things are optional. You can do a time zone, the locale. So there's just different information that you can pass as part of that request. Or like I say, you can extend it. So that's the request side of things. So having this platform and these properties makes it a valid request. This platform here lets us know that, oh, this request is a ZAP request. And so then it just, gives you additional things that you can do for the request. Now for the response, the minimum response coming back is this format. This is what the core response gives you. It does hard code the version as 4.0, but it specifies that the output is platform. For each output, this is you can actually, this is I think an array where you can get multiple outputs back based on how Jovo works, and you can read up about output on the Jovo side of things. But it's like session information, user information. So that's some stuff. So like here is some extensibility that's already built in to the response. Every response comes back has this ability, because this $send is going to actually result in a new item in this this output array. And I'll fix this here on the documentation, but this should be an array. Then what we're saying is that for a specific platform called ZAP, native response, then you can just add whatever key value pairs here you want. So there's already an extensibility mechanism built in that you could add whatever values you want, and then the client can look in that spot in the response and pull values out and do something based on that. But what we did is that we strongly typed an actions property. So in this case, you could also, under ZAP, instead of using native response or in addition to, you can define this actions array and say, oh, I want whatever this command that you said, I want it to result in oscillating the space heater every 3 seconds, and I want to set the temperature to 100 degrees. I don't know. So you can define your own custom types coming back, and the way that it looks in the response is here's that native response that resulted from this $send. Here's this other $send, which is going to be this actions format. Notice that that comes back, and it since it's using a num, whatever that value is, showing up as action oscillator, action temp. And then this was the actual message that was part of this hello sample. It was just like, do you like pizza? So here's the message coming back and some context that's getting passed back. So that's what the response will look like. And you've got some, like I say, extensibility that you can plug into that to handle whatever information you need to pass back from your voice app to your client. The last thing I want to talk about is the Jovo debugger. Now, there are documentations that talks all about the Jovo debugger. We saw a quick little example with the Jovo debugger. And then there's an NLU built into the Jovo debugger that if you type in text here, But there's also extensibility that you can do with these buttons. It comes with the example of a regular launch button with yes, no. We've added this launch zap, and I'll show you what that does here in just a minute. But notice when I did this regular launch, the request coming in was in a Jovo debugger format. Now, a lot of the testing that you want to do of your handlers, you can just do right here with the Jovo debugger. You can add buttons to it. You can add different intents. You could take advantage of this NLU that's built into here. So there's certain things that you can do. Definitely read the documentation on how to do that. But notice that when I click this launch zap, then I get a request over here, and notice that the request coming in is of type zap, platform zap. So this is hard-coded JSON that I've associated with this button that is sending this request in, but it's kind of showing how this would go through, how that would get turned into a launch request, the information that would be stored about these different things, what route would get picked based on the input that I had, these different outputs, defining in this case the native response extension, the actions output, and then it's actually redirecting to another component, which is doing its own output, which is the question, do you like pizza? And notice the response coming back is in zap format, and it's got this output array. So the same type of thing that we saw. And the way that we do that in our code is by going into this Jovo debugger. Notice you can define a label called launch, and it's, in this case, it's an input of type launch, but we're saying that launch zap is a request. And then this is just the JSON payload of what a request would look like. So you can define these different things, and you can go ahead and just test. You don't even have to have your client working. They could be building the Zap space heater someplace else. And while that's happening, you could be using the Jovo debugger and this, test out what your interface is with the JSON requests and JSON responses. I think that's about it. That's in this documentation. There's not a lot from this standpoint. Like I say, under this plugins thing is the whole definition of everything for the plugin. This app defines the plugin, makes it available. This Jovo debugger section extends this the buttons that are on the Jovo debugger. The other place, I guess, would be the components. And here in this components, you can see like what it would look like if I wanted to grab the actual request that was coming in off of this, and just different examples of extending it with this native response or extending it with this actions property. So that's the completeness of the example that we have today. Hopefully that was helpful to you, and I'd be interested in knowing how you use this to create your own custom extensions. Once again, this is a platform plugin that extends the core platform, but you could get into the Jovo documentation and look at like how was the Alexa platform defined, and you could create everything from scratch, so you have 100% control over what the request to response JSON looks like. But this gives you a lot of the basic structure and is a quick way to define your own platform. Thank you.